Hello and welcome to ChinnyVision 2, where I don't even bother to edit the videos. Today we're going to talk about Jeremy Clarkson and how he once wrote for Amstrad Computer User, the official Amstrad magazine. And there are other videos about this on YouTube, one by Larry Bundy Jr. In fact, it was me who tipped off Larry about this very subject many years ago. And I thought, well, here we are on ChinnyVision 2. Hardly anyone's watching it on here. I could just have a little chat between us about this, because I think, well, I've been doing other stuff on Amstrad Computer User, and it would be remiss not to mention it. In fact, I think I've featured this very edition of Amstrad Computer User before, because I love the cover so much, because this is the one Jeremy Clarkson first wrote for. And look at this brilliant... I love this cover. I'm sorry, I do absolutely love this cover. All done in camera for the living daylights, and no Photoshop or anything in those days. And we go in here and we see on page 48, what have Arkanoid, Ballbreaker and Crackout got to do with politics, gambling and children? No one is sure, not even Jeremy Clarkson. And, well, how did Clarkson end up writing for Amstrad Computer User? Well, I asked Simon Rockman, the editor, this many years ago, and I'm going to do this from memory. I can't find the tweets anymore. And from memory, Simon met Clarkson at a party in London. And Clarkson just moved down from Yorkshire and was trying to make his way as a journalist. And Rockman said, why don't you come and do some stuff for Amstrad Computer User? And Clarkson wanted a computer to write his articles on, so Rockman fixed him up with a CPC 464 and external disk drive on Amstrad staff rates. Presumably the reason he did this was because if he was going to write for Amstrad Computer User, he would need an easy way to load tape games, but he'd also need disk for his own work to do word processing and stuff. So quite neat thinking there from Simon. The first article was in that edition of Amstrad Computer User we just saw. September 87, I think it is. Yep. And let's go in and where do I go? Full screen. There we go, full screen. This is so polished. So here's the first article he wrote, a 2-page spread. The first thing that's going to strike you is the sheer body of text and the sheer lack of screenshots. Jeremy Clarkson ponders on his feelings for computer games, in particular Ballbreaker, Crackout and Arkanoid. Oh, in too far. And yeah, as I say, it really is kind of a strange old article. He doesn't get into reviewing the actual games until page 2, but he starts off with, we all have weaknesses. Some people drink too much, some smoke, some vote Labour, and some, I'm told, do all three. I won't do the voice. There we go. If anyone was mistaken, this was going to be in a slightly different style because he was so young at the time and hadn't got into the TV stuff. No, I mean, that's a pretty much standard Clarkson opening line. He then goes on to talking about gambling, which we spend several paragraphs talking about. Oh, I've lost my thing there. And it just kind of goes on and on and on. So the entire first left-hand column there is all about gambling. We then go into starting to talk about ball games such as football, cricket or hockey and how you play them. Then we start mentioning Space Invader games, however, require the use of only 2 or 3 fingers, and he can do that. And there was a game called Scrambled in my local pub, which took, it must have been 100 of my pounds over the years, but I became so good I could play it forever and never be beaten until my beer went flat. Comparing this type of game to the Atari did, however, install in my bonds the notion that the home computer type video game is a fuzzy mishmash of simplistic nonsense, and that the real games for arcade groupies like my good self could only be found in the corners of pubs that have got rust around the optics on their gin bottles. To this extent, I still believe this. So even though I've spent the last week glued to the screen in my Amstrad playing what I am told a selection of state-of-the-art home computer games, the phone has rung, people have knocked on the door and I've ignored the produce of she who is able to create a culinary masterpiece from 2 bits of old lemon peel and half a can of lassie. Would that be the first wife, Jeremy? These, you see, are trivialities to a man who's just desperately trying to find out just who it was that mucked up his spaceship and warp space, whatever that means. So, we've not mentioned the games yet, and we're now on to page 2. And we learn we're going to be talking about Crackout, Ball Breaker, and Arkanoid. And don't get to the end, Jeremy, and tell you which you like the most, because he opens the final, when he gets to the gaming section, he opens it with, I can start off straight away by revealing that Arkanoid is by far and away the best. There you go, stop reading. Crackout has ill-defined graphics and a sort of Tangerine Dream soundtrack, while Ball Breaker is bloody impossible. That's it. That's it, right? He does go into more details about the games, but it's all weak stuff, really. It's not what you would expect of a computer games reviewer. This is a writer desperately trying to write about something he's relatively new to and certainly not very knowledgeable about. He doesn't compare, he's got no other games other than the 3 he's got here to compare it to. So I guess he doesn't even know what good graphics and bad graphics on the CPC are. He does criticise the soundtracks. He says the soundtrack on Ball Breaker is absolutely terrible. I should like to meet the man who wrote it. I should like to gouge his eyes out with a mobile telephone. Another Clarksonism. It doesn't really work. It's just a lot of waffle. He does get into cars at the very end. If you can bear in mind that car is a car, and then you're asked to choose which you'd rather have, a Ferrari, a Nissan Cherry, or a Yugo, you wouldn't have much difficulty finding the answer. Choosing between these 3 games involves the same level of brain strain. So, it's not great. So we'll go on to the second of the articles, which was in January 1988. Trantor on the cover of ACU here, updated Amstrad logo with the stripe. That's how you know it's 1988, because that's when it came in. And where have we got Clarkson? Page 58. Fighting games. Why should anyone use a twig when they can have a sword? Jeremy Clarkson muses on this and other problems. So let's go to the January 1988 edition. Or article, rather. Jeremy Clarkson, pacifist or coward, still he can't resist chopping the odd head off. Perhaps he should think about teaming up with the Queen of Hearts. So let's zoom in on that first page, I think. It is curious, but in 27 years I cannot recall a single instant where I have struck another person. Oh, Jeremy, how life will change. Even in the school playground, when my knock-knees and stupid hairstyle made me a prime target for the bullies, I managed to stave off the bullies, whatever blows I had in mind, by an alloy of good luck and good management. So how long is it going to be before we get into the actual review? Okay, bottom of the first column. The games in question are Barbarian from Palace Software and Side Combat from Mirrorsoft. I was also asked to review the Samurai Trilogy by Gremlin Graphics Software, but having failed to load the game program properly, I gave up. Basically, the program just stopped whenever I tried to tell it what language I'd prefer. Even when I gave up asking for Yorkshire and opted for English, nothing happened. The computer screen reached new heights of lethargy. Everyone kept telling me to be patient, but even when I left it on and went to see The Living Daylights for the 4th and final time yesterday, it was still sitting on the language menu when I returned, unmoved by my apoplectic rage. I'm going to make a suggestion, Jeremy. I can't get back in time to you. We know that you had a disk interface on your 464. If it was a tape game, I would have possibly unplugged the disk interface, because sometimes, because there's a ROM in there, sometimes the ROMs on expansions can interfere with games. Spitfire 40 wouldn't load on my 6128 unless I disabled my ProText ROM with, was it ROM on 7 or ROM off 7? Can't remember, but something like that. So I'm guessing it could be that, but I could be wrong because it's System 3 and they probably just sent a bugged, incomplete piece of software. So at least he attempted to review the game, unlike in later years where ACU just basically, well, yeah, had a C64 version, if that. So he goes on to Psy-Combat. He explains the weapons and explains about how he plays the game. He also says, you're supposed to play with the joystick, but I gave up because the damn thing was so sensitive. I was forever ducking when I wanted to poke the other guy in the face or running away when he was down. Eventually I discarded it and used the keyboard instead, which is a lot more satisfactory. Pushing a level at 43.78674 degrees is a hit and miss affair. Pressing D is not. I'm guessing Jeremy may have possibly had an Amsoft joystick as well, an Amstrad JY2 or JY1 or something, which would make any game a challenge. We go over to the second page. Oh, I've gone. You see, I'm not editing this. I'm not editing. We're going to get it back. We will get it back. So, yeah, he quite likes Psy-Combat, but wrong article. And then he goes on to review Barbarian. I played a few computer games in my time, but Psy-Combat went straight into number one. The skill required is hard to acquire, the graphics are excellent, and there's no long wait between games or bouts. That's a boon. There's a long wait for everything in Barbarian, the soundtrack is shocking, and the graphics are concise as a cotton bud. However, it is even better than Psy-Combat. In essence, it's much the same, with you versus either the computer or you versus another pathetic earthling. Largely, I play the computer because humanoids are no match for my brilliance. He talks about, there you go, if he's not watching what's going on properly, you can spin around with an almighty swoosh and lop his head off. Blood gushes from the severed neck, the carpus tumbles to its knees, and then to the ground as you stand, sword held aloft, legs splayed, awaiting the arrival of a little green goblin who kicks the head away off the screen and drags the body away. If you can kill all your opponents, and they get better and better as time goes on, you get to rescue the princess, who is depicted on the cover by Saucy Sawaway Sun page 3 girl Sharon O'Dimbo. And yeah, he's actually reviewing the game. Sound effects are delightful. I would not have believed it possible for an electronic tool to accurately reproduce the sound of a severed head bouncing across the floor, but the squelches and thuds are all there, usually drowned out by the players' uproarious laughter, but they're all the same. Equally funny is the sound of a skull against skull in the headbutt mode, and I particularly like the metallic clang when the sword hits sword. So am I warped for enjoying these televisual feasts of unrestrained barbaric violence? You betcha. So that's much better. That's a much better article there from Clarkson. He's actually reviewing the games. He doesn't waffle for an entire page at the beginning. He's straight into it, and even though he's missing one of the games because he can't load it, the other two games, they're actually proper reviews. Okay, there's no scores and no comparisons to other games in the genre other than the ones he's got here. But, yeah, and he's actually got Psy-Combat and Barbarian pretty much spot on in terms of describing them. It's a vast improvement. Perhaps someone had a word, perhaps Simon Rockman had a word after the first article and said, look, you can write well, but you actually do need to review the games. But also, I think it's 3 months later, isn't it? So, yeah, by the time this has come out and the lead times, the mags, he's probably had 3 months to get more familiar with his Amstrad and happier with computer games. There was going to be a third article, and from memory, and it's many years since I spoke to Simon Rockman, it was going to be about car games, racing games, which would have been brilliant. The only problem is Clarkson started to work for Top Gear at this time and get more TV work, and therefore that article, even though it was commissioned, was never submitted. Well, shame really. It would have been nice to have seen the car one. And therefore those two articles are the sum total of Jeremy Clarkson's games reviewing career. Thanks for watching this very unpolished video. Sorry for things going around the screen here, everything, but that's the point of ChinnyVision 2. Quick and messy, no editing. If you do like this, by the way, please hit the subscribe button, because ChinnyVision 2 really needs subscribers. And if you've just stumbled across this, ChinnyVision, the main channel, is far better than the rubbish I'm putting out here, relatively speaking, of course. Thanks for watching. See you soon.